Love. Some would say it took a backseat when the pandemic forced us apart. As a family-run and proudly Canadian-owned company, Charm Diamond Centers saw the need to bring us together with tales of love and created the Canadian Love Map podcast. Since then, we've shared hundreds of real, uplifting stories that prove love conquers all. So thank you for listening. We couldn't do it without you. And remember, love starts here.
Yeah, I think it was a break from everything that's happening around us.
People needed something good, and especially when they won, like I said, it was, this little school made history with that championship win. So people, everybody wanted to celebrate, whether they were basketball fans or not. They knew these girls, and everybody wanted to be a part of it.
Hi, I'm Nancy Regan. Today's love story belongs to Jess and Mike and a whole team of girls who made a dark year a lot brighter. In this episode, we're taking you to a tiny little spot off the coast of Nova Scotia for this underdog story that made big waves in the local community. Hi, Jess and Mike. How are you?
Very good.
Good.
Thank you so much for joining me today. And you know what? Before we get into this conversation, I want you to tell me where you are.
So it would be a half-hour drive from the nearest town, which is Digby, and we would take our first ferry boat ride to Long Island, the village of Tiverton, drive through Long Island to the village of Freeport, where we catch our second ferry to our home in Westport, Briar Island.
So how small is this place?
Briar Island only has about 200 full-time residents. I'm not quite sure the population of Long Island, but a little bit more, but not many.
I think it was just shy of 800.
Tell me your love story, if you would.
I met Jessica in high school. We both went to high school together in Freeport, the local high school. I'm a few years older than her. She was a couple grades younger, but we met. And I guess
we hung out with the same group of friends.
Yeah.
Played the same sport.
So you were robbing the cradle?
He's a couple years younger.
2 years.
Yeah.
Just give me that was a very cut and dried version from Mike. Give me your version of it, please.
It was basically the same thing. I went to school in Westport until I was in grade 6, and our school only went to grade 6. So when I got in grade 7, I had to go to Freeport to school. So that's when I met a whole new bunch of friends. So, we had known each other for, several years, right? Because it's like I said, it's a small school. We all hung out with the same crowd of people. We were both into the same types of sports and stuff, same group of friends. And we were friends for years. And then once we hit high school, we started dating.
So I went on to university, and when I could, I come home and visit and spent time with Jess. And then towards the end of my university career and hers, we kind of ended up back in the same spot again. So it all worked out perfect.
And did you always want to stay or settle down in that same community where you grew up?
I wasn't sure of it. I think every kid going to school here thinks, I got to get away from here, go somewhere bigger, do better things. But there's really not much better out there than here. And my mind was really made up when I come home, and me and Jessica, we moved in together. And when we started talking family, this is definitely where I want it to be. And my work brought me here as well. So everything worked out perfect.
Let's talk about your work for a sec, Mike.
So I'm a marine engineer with the Canadian Coast Guard. I work on the search and rescue lifeboats, and the vessel's based right here in Briar Island.
Yes. And we talked about this at the beginning of our recording today, that your phone is on and the ringer stays on no matter what. So if we get interrupted, we will deal with that. We will know that it's important. So thank you for that service. That's a contribution to the country, and it's really special. Jess, did you always want to stay there?
Pretty much. I mean, I was excited to go off to school and stuff and experience, a different type of lifestyle and setting. But oh boy, living around fire trucks and police cars and sirens and constant noise. Like I was used to, four-wheelers going down the street. I could sleep with that. I had a rough time adjusting to life in Halifax for a while. It was not something I was used to. So I'm a small town home girl.
And now you have how many kids?
2 daughters.
2 girls.
So was it a good decision to bring them up there?
Most definitely.
Yeah, community raises children here.
When they say it takes a village to raise a child, Westport has that village to help raise your children.
Oh, that's so amazing. Well, we're going to jump to your contribution raising other people's children, I guess, now, because we want to talk about the excitement recently, this past spring, in Westport and in the area that you're in. So let's go back a couple of years and Jess, tell me about your decision to take on a special role at the high school where you teach, or the school.
Yeah,
sorry.
so I was at work one day, and I think it was lunchtime or the end of the day or something. I had a couple of the girls come knock on my door. They wanted to play basketball. They didn't have a coach anymore. Would I coach them? And I told them I didn't know. I'd have to think about it. I had a lot of other stuff on the go, especially with 2 girls, and we're busy. And they took that as a yes. That my thinking about it was a yes. They went and told the other players, Jess is going to coach us. We got a coach. We're good. Well, how do you say no to that, right? So I came home. I told
That's
Mike
awesome.
that, the Katie and Gracie and a couple of them had come to see me. He's like, well, what are you going to do? I'm like, well, I couldn't see them not have a team is what it came down to. So 3 years later, here we are.
Okay, so let's talk about how big the school is.
A little, it's around 118 this year, and that's pre-primary to grade 12. 118 students.
That's incredible. Okay, so you don't have a very big pool to draw from when you've got a basketball tryout.
No tryouts.
No tryouts. Anybody that wants to play gets to play.
Oh, that's pretty special. And you two both played basketball in your past,
Yep.
right?
Yep. I played junior through to senior in high school, and then on to university, did some intramural and things like that. But then kind of got away from the sport a little bit, and this brought me back to it.
So, Jess, how did the beginning of your coaching career go? First couple of years, what was it like?
It was pretty good. It was, the first year was a big learning experience for myself and the girls. Some of these girls have never played basketball in their life. They didn't know what a layup was. They didn't know where to shoot a foul shot from. A few of them knew some basics and stuff. So it was really, that first year was a big building year for all of us. Because, Michael and I had coached a team back in 2011, 2012 with a whole different bunch of girls. So, I played basketball to play and have fun. Michael, he kind of lived more for the sport, was really into it. So, he would give me a lot of advice, even back at the start on, some practice tips and stuff like that. I would go online, look for drills and stuff. The second year was much better. We had a few new girls join us, but by then most people at least knew what basketball was and the proper terms and stuff.
Okay, but that makes what happened eventually all that much more extraordinary.
Yes.
Tell me about, Jess, how you recruited a co-coach eventually for this year.
Well, the year before, we were probably halfway through our season, and I was kind of co-coaching with one of my former players that I had coached back in 2011, 2012. And then she fell in love and moved to PEI with her man and kind of left me by myself, which was okay. But like I said, with 2 girls and other stuff on the go, it was a lot for a bit. And So I asked Mike to come to a couple practices just to give some pointers, see what some things we could work on. And then they wanted him to come back, and he went to a few more, and then he just kind of stuck with us. So he decided at the end of last season that he was going to stay as much as full time as he could with his work schedule. So this year we worked a lot on trying to set up our games on his off weeks so he could be at all the games. And with practices, he could only come, every other 2 weeks on his off time.
So I love that. It was actually the girls who sort of invited you into the circle, Mike?
They did. I was at one of their games. Jess invited me to a game to go check them out and see how they were doing. So I did. And I was like the hyped up sports fan on the sideline that couldn't keep quiet. I was yelling a lot. And by the end of the game, a lot of the girls, if they were inbound and near me, would be like, Mike, what do I do? What do I do? And I would give them little tips and pointers. And it was at the end of that game, I heard this quiet little voice go, Mr. Mike. And I turned around. It was one of the girls from the team. And they're like, would you like to come to practice with us and help Miss Jess out? And that's how it all started. I went to one practice, and then they invited me back. So
they decided to keep them.
I told Jess I'd keep going until they didn't ask me anymore. And that took us to the end of their grade or their second year together, I guess. I could only be with them part of the year because of work responsibilities, but now I helped where I could. And then at the end of that year, they asked if I would come back and be a part of the team for, what would be this year. And I agreed.
Okay, so tell me what happened this year.
So this year, we started our year, and the girls were real nervous to play, like always. They didn't know how well they were going to do because in the past they've been beaten pretty bad by some teams. But we always say we never give up in a basketball game, and if we're not having fun, we're doing something wrong. But game after game this year, the girls kept winning. They started every game. They started winning, and they went on to win every game, and then ultimately the championship, the Western Region Division III champions.
Okay, so yes, you're giving away. That's the big deal. And how big a deal was it for them to win that championship?
Huge.
Put it in context for us. Yeah.
The school in Freeport has never hung a basketball banner. This was the first group of girls. The gym only has a couple banners. I believe there's a cross country one, a track and field one. So they were the first bunch to hang a basketball banner in the gym and a championship banner at that, and to have home court advantage. Like, we played the championship game in our home gym, which has never been done before. We hosted it.
Well, first of all, let's talk about that championship game. I'm a basketball player from way back, so I'm very curious, but I also just want to, for our listeners, hear sort of the excitement of the game.
So this team we played this year, the Shelwood Rebels, a much bigger school than us, but we played them twice this year, once before the championships. We beat them by 1 point, and then we went on to win against them in the final. But last year, this team, we played them once, and we lost by 50 points to this team. So when we went to play this team, the girls, they didn't know how well they were going to do. So when they won their first game against them, they were over the moon. They really was. And then they're like, well, maybe that was a fluke and this and that. I'm like, listen, there's no flukes in basketball. There's only wins and losses. So 1 point, that's all it takes to win. And anyway, they went into their last game with them super confident. We worked hard on a lot of things, worked hard on their strengths, and they pulled it off. They played great.
So what was the final score?
I don't recall right off.
67-45, maybe?
Yeah.
So there was a pretty big spread.
Yeah.
Oh, that's okay.
We thumped them.
I was just curious. Let's talk about the end of the game. What happened?
Well, I don't really think they realized it was the end of the game. There was like the buzzer went.
I think they still we're thinking they had another quarter left.
There was a big pause, and then finally they started showing some emotion and congratulating each other. And then I think it took a little time for it to sink in for them. There was a lot of tears, a lot of hugs, a lot of excitement.
Hype.
Yeah,
like they were just, I don't know. Like you said, I think it took a bit for it to sink in for them.
How did you two feel?
Oh, I was crying with them. It was pretty emotional.
That one, there was 5
Mike?
minutes left in the game, and I can remember walking to my wife down the sideline, and I said to her, I said, they've won this basketball game. And I knew that 5 minutes in, or 5 minutes left of the game. I was really confident in them, but they really weren't sure right up until the last minute. They were winning the game by a lot. I took a timeout, which is kind of odd. A minute left in the game, you're winning by 17 points, but I really just wanted them to calm down, realize what they had done.
Breathe.
Yeah, and no more risky plays. Don't get yourself hurt. It's things like that, right? And compose yourself, go back out and enjoy this last minute of basketball. And also, I wanted to make sure the 5 girls that were graduating this year were on the court all together for the last minute together.
This podcast is brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers, Canada's largest family-owned jewelry store. They are proud to be putting love on the map, and the staff at Charm Diamond Centers are thrilled to be a part of your love story too. So visit charmdiamondcenters.com or one of your local stores. Love starts here. Okay, so let's talk now about the reaction of the community, because that's really the other dimension of this love story. Like, I wanted to talk to you two about meeting and getting together and coaching together, but I really wanted to hear about this community response to this high school girls basketball team winning.
It was something else. Like they said, about a week before the championship game, the girls all got together at the community hall. They made posters, they made signs to hang up in the gym for the parents. All the parents and brothers, sisters, they all came to the outside of the parking lot of the gym to wish them well before the game. And the girls, we had them line up, and they came out of the gym. I had the parents line up, so they kind of made like a V, and the girls all ran out through them, cheering, yelling, and then they turned around, ran back through them, back into the gym to get ready for the game. And then, like Mike said, after the game, like the parents finished the game. By the time we came outside with the banner, and so they could see their parents, do pictures, all that stuff, because they weren't allowed in the school. Like the parents were all back there with their signs. Mike and I had roses to hand out to our graduating 5. Some of the parents had bought roses for all the team players as well. Like it was just like horns were honking. Like everybody was there. Our principal was there, our athletic director. Like it was big.
But it wasn't confined to the parking lot, right?
No, it moved on.
Once we got to the ferry, word spreads quickly in a little community, and the ferry members knew about it, so they were tooting their horn and congratulating the girls and doing turns with the ferry boat. And then once we get off the ferry, there was people in their yards clapping, and fire department was out with the fire trucks.
The girls were so excited on the ferry. They're like, we're going to do a parade around the island. So the ferry was full of pretty much most of us. We sent out a few texts, so there were a few people that joined us. And we went, Westport's very small, so we went halfway up Water Street, went all the way down the back street. Then we went down what we call the front road down to the point, then back up all Water Street. So we made sure we covered all of Westport. And like you said, there were people in their driveways, people on their decks, people in their windows, like waving, honking. It was pretty awesome to see.
That sounds pretty spectacular. Tell me what you meant when you said the ferry did some turns.
They did like a 360 coming across the passage, blaring their horns.
Were the girls were you the girls waiting for it at the time, or were they on the ferry?
No,
We were all
were
on the ferry.
Yeah, we were coming across, and
Like,
yeah,
we didn't know what was going to happen. Like, when we went to go drive on the ferry, the whole line of us started honking our horns driving down the ferry slip in Freeport. And then once everybody got on the ferry and parked, then the ferry started blasting their horn. And then as we were probably like a minute, 2 minutes outside of docking in Westport, the ferry started laying on its horn again, and it did a little couple 360s before they docked us into the wharf.
The girls must have just thought they'd gone to heaven.
They did.
They were loving it. There was a little party on the deck of the ferry boat. Everybody was, the doors in the minivans were slid open. Everybody was having fun and still celebrating.
People were out moon roofs and
Seems to me that it's a pretty incredible experience, particularly during a tough year.
oh, for sure.
Yeah, I think it gives people something to look forward to. They were tuning in to this girls' basketball team. Everybody was following it. If I met somebody on the street, they'd be like, Coach, I watched the game. You're doing great, and they give me little tips and pointers. Like, everybody was tuning in, and I think it was a break from everything that's happening around us.
People
really
needed something good, and especially when they won. Like I said, it was, this little school made history with that championship win. So people, everybody wanted to celebrate, whether they were basketball fans or not. They knew these girls, and everybody wanted to be a part of it.
Big wins like that just don't happen here. So everybody was really excited.
How disappointed were they that they didn't get to go on to the provincials?
We were all pretty disappointed. Like, we knew that beforehand that it wasn't going to happen, but I'm fairly confident had we have gone on to provincials, these girls would have seeded very high and would have had a very strong possibility of walking away with a provincial banner as well.
I tuned in and watched the other teams, the other regional winners, and as a coach, I was very honest with them. There's some very good teams out there, but at the end of the day, I told them they would have been there. They would have been very competitive, and it would have been real exciting to see how well these 8 girls could have done against these much bigger, larger teams.
Teams that do have tryouts.
Yeah, and they had to be in good shape if there were only 8 of them. That's a pretty shallow bench.
Our basketball plan this year was very simple, and it was run, 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 which is kind of odd because of the small bench we had. We didn't have a lot of players to look to, but I was fairly confident in the conditioning of my players through other sports, through work of their own, through past basketball seasons, that they would do just fine, and they did. And it actually worked to be a little bit of an advantage for us, these bigger teams with 10, 12 people on them. If they thought they could run with our girls, well, and tire us out, they were mistaken, because these girls could run and play. And we used our timeouts very wisely for basically breaks.
We always told them they could be tired tomorrow.
Yes, that was one of the things we repeatedly said, girls, you could be tired tomorrow. And that became kind of the motto for the year.
That's so great. And what would you say the two of you got out of this year?
We had a lot of fun. I really enjoyed going to the gym and spending time with the team and my wife. It was, time out of the house. Our girls would frequent us at practice, our 2 daughters, and the basketball team. I know it was a little bit of an interruption for them, but they were real good about it. They, played basketball with them, and the girls sat and watched, and my girls tuned into every basketball game. They know every basketball player. They're like, they're definitely role models to my 2 daughters. My oldest daughter believes they all have superpowers of some sort and aspires to be like each one of them, which I love to see.
Which is great, because we hope, by the time our oldest hits junior high, that we'll be back to coaching again.
And I bet they're never going to forget this year.
I hope they don't. I told them to savor the moment, and I guarantee down the road when they all meet up, they'll be talking about it.
Their names are all signed. After a couple of days after we got after the game, we met in the gym at lunchtime, and I had an ice cream celebration cake. Every year I buy them a cake, no matter how their season goes, and it's kind of our end of the year celebration. So we had cake at the school. Mike came over for that. And then we went to the gym and all the girls signed the back of the banner. They put some quotes from the year on it, their names, their numbers. So I definitely don't think it's anything they'll ever forget.
Well, we're going to hear from them actually right now.
Oh, awesome.
Okay, Isabella, you go first. She'll get
Well,
warmed up.
I was just going to say, like, we've worked together as a team, like, so well. Like, we were complimented as, like, our teamwork and how we just have, like, this great connection. I feel like because our school is so small, we don't have many options and, like, girls to play with. So us working together for so long and us finally winning, it just made it that more surreal because we just have, like, we know each other on the court and just, yeah, in the community. Like, we're all close friends, and it just made it that much better when we won.
What are they like as coaches?
Amazing.
Yeah. I feel like
there's so many things.
we call her Miss Jess, and she's kind of just like, we make her laugh all the time because we're just kind of crazy. And Mike is very like, just as a coach, like he has such knowledge for the game that like being coached by him just made it that much more fun to play. And I feel like he prepared us so well for games that like, I know it made me less nervous to play games because I felt more prepared as a team. We bond as a team with our coaches, but then like we each individually have a relationship with each of them because like before our championship game, Mike took us like out like one-on-one and he talked to us to make sure we were all okay and just like ready. So I feel like on big teams or like different places, you don't get that, but he just cares about like all of us and like Jess too. Like they just want to make sure we're okay before we play. They just knew that we could do it all season. And then for us to actually do it, because they really believed in us the whole time.
Okay, Jaden, tell me your reaction when you walked into the parking lot.
Well, I'd never experienced anything like that, especially since this was my first year playing with these girls. It was like a big family, and I never ever experienced that before. So like Gracie's mom was hugging me, and like her dad was, patting me on the back and telling me that I did a good job, and just stuff like that. It really, I don't know, it felt like you were loved, and it was nice.
Yeah. You realize like it's just so good because like you're with your team and your family and like everyone's just so happy. And it was just like all of our hard work paid off.
It felt really rewarding to know that
Yeah.
like, all of our practices that like we had practices not on days we would have practices, and it all paid off in that like one moment. Like that one moment of the fairy turning.
Yeah.
We're like, wow. Like that's what it just felt good.
Thanks, Mr. Mike and Miss Jess.
Thanks, Mr. Mike and Miss Jess. We love you.
Thank you, Mr. Mike and Miss Jess.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mike and Miss Jess.
Thank you, Mr. Mike and Miss Jess, for this amazing experience.
Well, the school motto is small but mighty, and they truly were. But we also, as a basketball team, we never give up.
Well, you guys clearly set the tone, and I love the story. Thank you so much for sharing it with us.
Thank you for getting in contact with us.
I'm coming down to see you when things loosen up. Thanks so much for listening to the Canadian Love Map. If you love us, please subscribe and share. We'll be back next week with another love story to add to the map. This podcast is presented and made possible by Charm Diamond Centers. It's hosted by me, Nancy Regan, and is produced and distributed by Podstarter.